Today we're going to talk about Chiron. And so I would like to start with a little fairy tale. Heather, feel free to jump in anytime because I'm sure you know this fairy tale a little bit more than I do. So this fairy tale, or the Greek myth of Chiron, starts with Kronos, our friend Saturn. Saturn, or Kronos, had received a spell that he was going to be replaced by one of his children. So whenever he had a child with his wife, Rhea, he swallowed his children. And tired of losing all her children, Rhea just sent Zeus away, which was one of Kronos' child. So Kronos went on this quest trying to find Zeus. In his quest, he found Philyra, whom he raped, and Chiron was born. Now, Chiron was born in a very unusual way. He was half man, half horse. Philyra was disgusted by the look of his child, so she rejected him as well and abandoned him to his fate. Luckily, Chiron was rescued by Apollo, who trained him and taught him about arts and music, while Artemis, his twin sister, taught him about hunting and archery. So Chiron grew up to be a very refined centaur. He loved the arts, he was fair, and he was a benevolent centaur. He became a teacher for many of the heroes that we know in Greek mythology, and found himself, unfortunately, in the middle of a fight between Heracles, one of his students, and other centaurs who were quite fierce. He became wounded by a poisoned arrow that struck him by chance. And this arrow was poisoned by the blood of Hydra that Heracles had acquired in the second labor. So Chiron, since he was a demigod, he was son of a god, he was immortal. But at the same time, this poison was so powerful that his wound could not heal. So this is how Chiron became the wounded healer. So he could be a benevolent force to everyone, and he had indeed powers to heal others and his students, but he was unable to heal his own wound. In the end, what he decided to do, because the pain was unbearable, he decided to exchange place with, I don't remember his name, but some other Greek character that was doomed to have his liver eaten by an eagle. And he waived his immortality. He decided, I will be immortal no more and allow myself to die to stop this pain. So, Heather, do you want to?
Prometheus.
Prometheus. Thank you, James. Thank you. Do you want to add something to this story? Was this what you researched as well?
That was what I researched as well. Yeah, you went even further than I did, all the way through. So I learned something.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the myth of Chiron. There's all sorts of heroes and, of course, events in this story. We can go even further with more details. But the bottom line is Chiron talks about two wounds that we carry. He talks about this very primal wound of being abandoned on birth by both his father and his mother. So this internal rejection that we carry, this question, are we loved? And also this second wound that was inflicted by ego, by the actions of others in this case, but it could have been his own actions that brought him to become wounded. And this is, for me, this reminds me of how is it that we deal with our everyday struggles, our everyday challenges, how we become I don't know, offended sometimes, or upset with what happens around us. So it is to Chiron that we have to resort to try and find our skills to overcome all these challenges. And they live happily ever after, or not. Okay. Any comments?
Chiron has not yet completed a full cycle since its discovery. It will take some 51 years to complete a cycle. And in 1977 at Samhain on the 1st of November, it was discovered. So we're talking about another 4 or 5 years before it completes its cycle. And I think that the comprehension, the understanding we've got of a planet cannot really be said to be complete if we haven't actually seen it, we haven't experienced its going through all 12 zodiac signs. So I'm not skeptical exactly, but I'm doubtful as to whether or not we collectively as astrologers have understood Chiron well enough. And I've come across it so frequently, especially when you go to somewhere like America, where in England, every astrologer knows about Chiron. In America, that's not necessarily true. In the Baltic states, it just isn't true. So astrologers are only picking up on it slowly, and they prefer other planets to study than Chiron. So there's that. And I find that there's only one answer. Oh, Chiron is the wounded healer. And that's what everybody knows, and nobody says anything else. And I don't exactly reject that, but I want to see whether or not that's the essential mystery or a derivation, a meaningful facet of its expression. And I rather prefer that second interpretation, that one of the things that Chiron is the wounded healer. But that's one thing amongst lots of things it could be. And I've got a preference for what I actually think it is. And I don't find Chiron in my chart indicates my birth wound at all. It's got nothing to do with that. And it might help with my healing, but all of the planets do that. So I can't quite get it for myself. And when we look at the mythology, which I'm very, very grateful to have so clearly presented today, we see that Chiron's a demigod, neither a person nor a god, halfway between the two. And we see that this linkage between the inner planets, Sun to Saturn, and the outer planets, Uranus to Pluto, is bridged by Chiron. Chiron sometimes has an orbit inside Saturn and sometimes outside of Uranus, has an eccentric orbit. So it clearly stands astronomically in a band of the cosmos, which is somewhat inward and earth-based and somewhat outward and cosmic. And so Chiron has been called the Rainbow Bridge. The bridge because it bridges inner and outer consciousness, and the rainbow because the hippies got onto it first. As far as I can work out, there's no other reason to call it a rainbow. Now, when we're talking about this myth that I've only recently kind of studied, I think I might have known it once, but I forgot about it, of the adoption wound. I think it's very good to point out that it wasn't just the arrow in the foot that was the wound of Chiron, which incidentally, when I first learned about Chiron for decades, it was said to be self-inflicted. Everybody said that he shot himself in the foot. Not true. The other wound is the sense of being rejected by the parents, or mummy and daddy God, in this particular case, for definite. So it's a sense of being rejected by heaven. And if you actually come to earth with the feeling that you miss your divine inheritance and you feel pissed off about that, a bit of self-pity creeping in, you're going to feel like you're rejected by heaven. And a lot of people grow up with that attitude, that they're rejected by mum and dad, therefore God, and they harp on to that. Whereas if you have a different attitude of mind, you could say, thank God my parents released me when I was really, really young, so I'm not subject to their bullying dominance, because most of the people that I know would rather have had a slightly different version of their parents, if not different parents, you know. So for someone not to have had that problem, if you see it quite differently, that would be an advantage. And this whole idea of the pain of the earth thing and deciding to leave the earth plane to return, not to be immortal. Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't want to live here. What a horrible place to spend eternity, earth, compared to heaven. It's nonsense that we want to be immortal. So, you know, why don't we see Chiron as a wise individual, enlightened individual who thinks he's got an advantage not having his own parents, because you know what parents turn out to be like, and he's got an advantage being sent back home, not having to stay on earth throughout eternity. And I think then we have the mystery of Chiron, which I prefer, is that Chiron has got the ability to see everything the other way around, to see everything to his advantage. Now, when I actually think very, very carefully and subtly and deeply about the difference that makes a difference between a loser and a spiritually awakened being, you know, the muggles and the magical types, you know, what's the difference that makes the difference? And I would say it's the ability to turn every situation around to your advantage by having that ability to shift your neurological patterning. That's what I think Chiron does. Chiron gives us the ability to move our neurological attitude from negative to positive, from pessimism to optimism. So Chiron is actually our faith. That's how I would see it. And then that checks out very much better in my particular horoscope.